at the close of year one and at the outset of year two, state government, in addition, is stronger, and we are gathering strength. Our December statewide rapid hire events drew 3,700 job seekers. That's 3,700 New Mexicans eager to work, eager to serve their communities and neighbors right now. Together, we delivered meaningful raises for New Mexico educators passionate about their students. We should be celebrating, and I hope this speech, even though I'm off script, feels like that celebration, because we also launched pivotal transformations in environmental leadership and long overdue infrastructure. Our Children, Youth, and Families Department this year cut the average wait time on its child abuse hotline from an unconscionable hour plus to less than 5 minutes. Our Human Services Department settled with each of the behavioral health providers ejected from the state by the Martinez administration, a monumental step towards the robust and rebuilt behavioral health system now New Mexico urgently needs. We took the initiative on building up states' reserves for a future rainy day. We made sure we have an equitable framework for reforming our state pension system in a way that protects New Mexico taxpayers and respects retirees, both current and future. We boosted common sense oversight of polluters, and we put New Mexico on a direct path to being the nation's clean energy leader, ensuring our land, air, and water, our inheritance, as residents of the state, the incredible state, are passed on to future generations. We brought industry and environmental leaders together, and we are moving forward on creating nation-leading rules that will curb methane pollution, create jobs, and deliver more dollars into New Mexico classrooms. We took on the Trump administration when they abandoned border communities, when they tried to gain access to our workforce data so they could deport working parents and tear families apart. And with your help, we will keep up those efforts, up those good fights, and we will keep investing for a bright tomorrow while delivering solutions to the urgent needs of today.
The momentum from the first year, how much of that did you hear? Meaning, it seems like she has some hand here, the old Seinfeld joke. She has some hand here. She proved a point in some areas year one. Is it enough to carry through this aggressiveness for year two?
I think that definitely, I think she had some pretty strong points on, how the economy and jobs have sort of turned around. Mm-hmm. She didn't elaborate that a lot of that is oil and gas production, right? I mean, a lot of these jobs coming in are frankly in the oil and gas sector, and I think that's the, we've called it the Sophie's Choice, Faustine's Choice, whatever, this decision we've made to perpetuate, I think, a pretty deep dependence on oil and gas in the state, and that means that she and the legislature have a lot of new money to work with to do things that we've been wanting to do for generations now, but the fundamental, choice is still there. We're taking all this new money, and now we're going to see a debate over the next 30 days. This is a tax and budget session about what's the best way to use that money. And as Justine said, some of that's creating these trust funds, which really are sort of like spending the money, but really kind of setting it aside. So one of the big, to Dee Dee's point, one of the big course corrections, I think, was the governor had previously supported the constitutional amendment to take 1% out of the almost $20 billion permanent fund, right, and put that into early childhood for a real investment in early childhood. Mm-hmm. And I think she hasn't talked about that. I think she may not even be supporting that anymore. And now this new idea of taking $320 million and putting it, sort of setting aside, mm-hmm, which is really not spending it, and then drawing some of that money down, not insignificant, but certainly not adequate amount of money we talked about before, mm-hmm, into early childhood. I think that's a big change in direction from what she had been saying last session. And I think that's a political reality for her, working with a very conservative Senate Finance Chairman, John Arthur Smith, sure, whose support she needs, right, for all these other initiatives. And he sort of looked the other way on some of the big spending that she's proposed, which a lot of folks including myself, support in terms of investing in education and others. But I think there's a little bit of a compromise she has made on early childhood, despite all those sort of really talk of really making major investments in it. Really, the truth is, like, we continue to underfund early childhood. And the other thing I'll say, Gene, is there was no talk in this speech about tax reform or any of the tax proposals, which was surprising given this is a tax and budget session, and that's a totally germane to this session, and it's really what we need to get to is how are we going to diversify these revenues so that we move away from dependence on oil and gas revenues.
Good points there. Senator Feldman, let me continue with education. That was her first main priority after talking about what we had accomplished.
That's right.
Now she's saying the moonshot continues, maybe second stage, just to continue the joke. But what did you hear? I didn't hear anything about teacher raises. There was a lot, but
Well, remember, last session, we increased education funding, which is half of our budget, by I think $500 million.
That's right.
And it mostly went for teacher salary increases, some after-school programs. This year, there's still a request for $200 million. That's not chump change. But then, in addition, there are these other bookends of public education, which is the early childhood trust fund, which I agree is a very smart move on the part of the governor, and also the tuition-free college for all students who want to go to both trade schools, state schools, universities, junior colleges in New Mexico. Those are the two new things in terms of education. I think they're both kind of halfway steps. I think that having the early childhood trust fund gives folks an out from the 9 years that the advocates have tried to tap into the permanent fund without success. So this is a halfway measure, but it's a halfway measure that looks like it's going to happen. And it may not be enough to really address the 122,000 kids under 5 that need real help. But it's a start. It's a better start than we have today.
On the early childhood, so I want to be clear. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's both the department creating the department and creating a fund that is really going to really capitalize very little investment in early childhood. I want to say that that's a departure for the governor, because a lot of folks who really were hoping that she would and had previously supported the constitutional amendment, which is a real investment. That's $200 million. As Dee Dee said, there's 120,000 plus kids under 5 in New Mexico, and to really invest anywhere near what they need, like $25 million isn't going to do it. I know it's hard for people to deal with these numbers because there's a lot of numbers, but you need a significant investment. We put $500 million into K-12. That's the kind of investment we need to make in little kids. And so I do think that this is very much both the department and the trust fund. If they're not fully funded, and early childhood is not fully funded, I do think they're going to be seen as distractions, as diversions, and even undermining this idea to fully fund early childhood. So I do think it was a political compromise. I personally don't think it's going to get to where we need to be for kids. It might be politically expedient. It might have got John Arthur Smith on board, who's really been the obstacle. But I actually think it's not good policy for the 120,000 kids.
Dan, Eric just anticipated a question I wanted to ask you about that. Is it more, just like he said, the governor calling her shot to have something palatable versus what she really wants to get at and what's best for kids out there? And then your opinion, of course, I'm interested in on the amount of money that we're talking about here.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, as you and I joke all the time, Gene, I mean, we could have $1 gazillion and that's still not enough. I mean, you guys want to fund everything and we talk about at the table. I think the governor is running into the buzzsaw of reality, right? Yes, we want to do this, 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 and well, there's only so much money we can do. Then, most importantly, you got to figure out how do you get the votes, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how great the plan is. If you can't get the number of people to pass it, clearly they got the votes in the House to do anything I would think as far left as they want to do, progressively as they want to do. It's going to get through the House. The Senate is where it stops. And so they've got to come in and have some compromising. And I think looking at these funds and talking about saying, look, we want to pass a constitutional amendment that's going to give unbridled access. Because, look, one of my complaints has always been we did a raid on the permanent fund with the constitutional amendment under Governor Richardson. I think it was 1% or something we took to bolster education. And I said from the day we started talking about it, you know, I know I was like Nostradamus, it came to fruition. Whatever we took out of the permanent fund, we just lowered what we put in education from the discretionary dollars. So we really didn't do anything to help education. So if you're going to start putting these things out there, rating permanent funds, doing things like that, I think you got to have some tie-ins to say, listen, you can't stop the funding you're having now. The governor, I think most importantly, wants to get something done. Look, we're an instant gratification society. No longer do we look at things for 8 years to get things done. People are going to look back 90 days from now and say, what have you done? And if she can say, look, I was able to get $300 million, put it aside in a early childhood development fund, the children's fund, and that's what we're going to call it, and boy, we're going to make great steps, I think check the box, things are good.
Justine, the idea that, the governor really talked about a lot of educational opportunities out there for folks, and I didn't hear much or anything about trades. I mean, we all want kids to go to college. My kids are in college. There's no disagreement about that. But did she meet New Mexicans halfway about where we are? You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I think you're right. There are a couple big things that I saw missing from the speech, and one was that whole discussion. You know, every kid is not going to go all the way through university, and every kid is not going to get a professional degree, and not every kid should or wants to. So we didn't talk about that at all, and also about rural New Mexico, with the exception of, we have all this money that thank you so much for bringing out of the land in the form of oil and gas and mineral riches that we're going to spend mainly in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody coming from Texas to do the work to bring the money forward. There was not a lot of talk of rural New Mexico, and I think that approach of hers is really borne out in her polling numbers. I mean, you see her near 50% now. We talked about this time last year when she was taking on the sheriffs and really kind of running at odds with a lot of people, a lot of conservative Democrats, a lot of veterans, a lot of people all over rural New Mexico, middle of the road folks who do not like her approach on gun reform. And she notably did not, I'm sure we'll talk about that. She didn't talk about that at all in her speech. So I think that was notably absent. That goes right in line with the trades conversation. And what can we do in different parts of the state to help kids and to help grow these areas?
But as we worked last year to improve health and welfare of New Mexicans, others were working to deprive them of both. And I'm talking about the criminal violence that is far too prevalent in our great state. Now, let's all agree that the days of hardened, violent, repeat offenders not doing any real time, getting unwarranted second and third and fourth chances because our system is too broken to hold people accountable, that those days must unequivocally end, and they must end now. We have to draw a line. New Mexicans are sick and tired of seeing predators circle in and out of custody, never facing the full force of law. I am too. Here's the fact. Dangerous, repeat offenders have got to be in jail. If you are terrorizing our communities again and again, we have nothing to talk about. You must be stopped and held accountable. And we have a chance in this session to come together as a state and put together the best practices so that we're both smart and tough on crime. We can do both. Everybody, every policymaker at every level of government has to be on board. This year we launched as a state the Fugitive Apprehension Unit. We sent state police officers to help support local police efforts in Albuquerque, in Valencia County, in Alamogordo, and down on the border. And under my budget proposal, we will fund 60 new state police officers and better pay for new recruits. We'll give them the time and support they need to make meaningful connections with the communities that they serve all across New Mexico and to keep them safe. And I'm also proposing stiffer penalties for gun and drug and human trafficking to keep the purveyors of those particular kinds of evil off our streets longer.
Background checks. red flag laws, all of these have pretty, the majority of New Mexicans, especially given what's going on in the country, they support them. Now, there's going to be very conservative special interests. Frankly, none of those sheriffs have supported her anyway for governor. So why, you could say she could at least try to maybe offer a fig leaf, but at the end of the day, a lot of people supported this governor because they expected bold policy. And I think in the first year, she very much did that on a lot of fronts. I guess the big point that I was trying to make earlier was that I feel like she's kind of moving back more toward the center. Not on the gun issue. I think it was bold for her to continue to say, look, if law enforcement, by the way, if law enforcement and family members think that this should be addressed, then I think we ought to be supporting them in terms of removing weapons from situations where there could be really, really tough circumstances.
Every politician has to have room to grow a little bit. You're not the same person you are 2 years after when you first get into office. Do you sense
you got to work with people to get things done.
Right, yeah, exactly right.
Well,
do you sense on the law and order stuff some growth? Not growth sounds diminishing, but some change in the governor on law enforcement things and law and order. I mean, the fugitive apprehension law. And there's lots of things out there that may not.
Well,
have
remember,
been...
we're 2 years in to a 4-year term, so this is a moving picture. And when you look at this State of the State address and this moment in time as a snapshot, remember, there are the fiscal issues. There is the law enforcement issue. There is the cannabis issue. There is the gun control issue. And you might be able to make progress on the gun control issue by giving a little bit on another issue. It's a composite picture, and all the pieces are moving. And so maybe if you gain a few allies on the criminal justice side from the sheriffs, then maybe you're going to make a little progress over here. So, I think that's the art of politics, and you get better as you grow into it.
Art of the deal, right?
Art of the deal, maybe, yeah.
But I think what she may be realizing is if you look at the top line numbers, like Eric is saying, maybe 65, 70% in favor of the red flag legislation. The folks who are opposed to it, those are hard nosed, and those are people who, if you go against them on the gun issue, they are not going to be with you on anything, and you have lost them. And I think what the governor may be realizing, and maybe why she isn't talking about this, and maybe why she's trying to reformulate her message a little bit, is we have disproportionately a Hispanic veteran population here. We have a lot of veterans. We have huge rural areas. We have a lot of gun owners. And so she's got to be really careful about how she calibrates that, or the other stuff, she's going to lose on the other stuff. And so I think that was a calculated decision. And maybe she's not pulling back when you look at the legislation, but she's got to change the tenor of her conversation about it.
But I think Justine made a great point it kind of adds to my disagreement with Eric, which is shocking, is that, Susana Martinez at this time, the economy was tanking. She was out there talking about driver's licenses for, taking back driver's licenses for illegal immigrants, talking about taking on the President of the United States and Barack Obama, who was out there advocating for the Real ID Act, and all kinds of stuff was going on. And she didn't have the money, and she was still, 65%. You got Governor Lujan Grisham, who's got all this money. There's no lack of being able to do new things. When you meet the governor and you get to know her, she's actually a nice person, good person, easy to get along with. And here she is hovering below 40 to 50%. I think a lot of it has to do. I think the question is what happened in the election that hasn't translated into the daily things. Well, the election is an easy question. It was her opponent. I mean, it was easy to have a high favorable against her opponent. Now she's having to do the hard work, which is figure out a way, like Justine said, how do you balance getting cannabis? I think there's a reason, to Justine's point, why she talked a lot about rural New Mexico with cannabis, economic development, and didn't bring up red flag laws, because red flag laws are going to be overly opposed in all of rural New Mexico. But if you can start having the ability to negotiate, things are going to come out. Look, there's things, if you look at some of the pre-filed bills this year that I think are pretty interesting that she didn't talk about and we're not talking about. They've got some bills to deal with electric cars and power transmission stuff, what you would consider kind of the green energy stuff. Republicans are sponsoring this year. You got Neville out of there, you got Woods that are doing some of these things. I mean, these are bills that 5 years ago Republicans were like, you've lost your mind. And so she's brought some of those guys over to carry some legislation in plans that she's looking at, which I think is pretty interesting. But I think it just goes to Justine's point. Let's talk about this issue over here while we debate about this stuff I want to get done over here,
Right.
and let's kind of get it figured out.
Interesting. I want to go around the table, get some last thoughts from everyone. I'll start with you, Eric. In the context of where she was getting into office, what this first year has left off, and where she wants to go with this next year, what's your summation of all that?
Well, as I sort of alluded to earlier, I think many of us, myself included, were surprised at how bold she was in terms of, if you want to call it progressive or working family type legislation, really going after, increasing the minimum wage, some pretty bold stuff on gun reform, a lot of willingness to spend and invest in key areas. And I think many of us were very, very pleasantly surprised at how much she was willing to take on those fights. I do think in this second year, for a couple of reasons. One is, I think her political mentor very much has been Bill Richardson, who also did the same thing, did some bold stuff to Dee Dee's point, and then sort of like, okay, I better start sort of having a little bit more of a balanced sort of, there's something for the more moderate folks. But also, I don't want to lose the point, this is an election year. Right. And the other thing we haven't talked about is a lot of these conservative state senators, Democrats, are facing opposition, and she has decided she's going to try to work with Senator Smith, who's been like in the Democratic Party is the least, especially among progressive folks, is the least liked senator. We feel like he's very much the problem for not taking care of some of these structural problems we have. So I think the other thing that's happening in year 2 that might be different in year 3 is that some of this has to be deferred. There's also some policies that I think might sort of appease folks like Smith.
Well, I think the governor's very pragmatic. Yeah. She's grown up in government. She built her career in government, and I think she knows all of these relationships really well. She knows the system really well, and now it's time for her to figure out what will play to a larger audience and how to make big change statewide, dealing with the business community, dealing with people who have different social and cultural views than maybe she does and maybe her staff does. And so I think it's really a critical moment for her, could be an inflection point for her administration.